Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eternal Card Breakdown, or the Eternal Spoiler Breakdown, rather, where we talk about the cards that are upcoming in Eternal, specifically the upcoming expansion, Bastion Rising. So, yeah, we're going to be having some pretty exciting new cards being released. There were two new that were announced as part of the announcement of the pre-order today, and we're going to review both of them. There's basically I think they fall on exact opposite ends of the spectrum in that one of them is a fairly boring spiky card that is very, very kind of like specifically anti-fun, and the other one is a very fun, interesting 7-drop that has a lot of weird things going on with it. So we decided to start with the one that sucks and I hate it. Yeah, this is Grand Suppressor. It's a card that can't use summon. Cards can't use summon abilities on a Simulacre 2/3. I don't believe there are any other Simulacre in the game. There may be one, but by and large, like, not a tribal faction by any means. But this is a colorless card at 2 that I think is specifically designed to not ever have any tribal synergies because it's designed to, of course, fit in all different types of decks. And the ability on it just basically says that no one can use summons. So if you have a lot of the standard really powerful throne cards that do a lot of things when they are summoned, then yeah, you can basically you can turn those cards off with a fairly hard to kill 2-drop that does not die to most forms of trades, does not die to annihilate, and does not die to anything that cares about color or multi-faction, single faction or multi-faction. So yeah, it's got a decent amount of resistance to it. It's reasonably well statted, similar to something like Verit. You basically just have a card that like can stand pretty well in most decks, and if you're seeing a lot of them, then you can just sort of take this card out, put it into any deck that you want, and it just turns off that part of the meta. I am not a fan of the design of this card. Cards with summon abilities are really, generally pretty fun. They do a lot of interesting stuff. There's a lot of really interesting summon effects out there. I feel like in Expedition, this is maybe a response to like Mono Shadow with its very powerful Blight Moth and Icaria decks, sort of the value out decks that have like very strong summon effects in those areas. The main problem with this is that, of course, like, the Mono Shadow decks do run this card because it's colorless and it's pretty easy for them to use if they want to run it. They can also devour their Grand Suppressors to set up their Icarias, so they're not going to feel too bad about having it in the list. And B, I don't really feel like the Mono Shadow Icaria list was necessarily the most frustrating type of deck on the market. I just am like a little uncertain if this card is going to change the meta in a way that's going to be net positive. Yeah, and beyond that, like, I think that like as a colorless card, it's fairly boring. I don't love the hate aspect of it. There's just not really a lot of things that I'm going for it. What I will say is that this is obviously a pretty powerful card. It does slot into a lot of different decks. It is obviously very good against very specific types of decks, so this is something that Spikes are going to want to put into different lists because it's just a really easy unit that already has like a really good stat line, and then it also has relevant text, so as long as you aren't playing too many summon abilities or you have ways to kill your own Grand Suppressor, you're going to be pretty happy to see this. But I don't know if it addresses a lot of the problems that I generally have with the format at the moment, and I am not wild about seeing it as one of the cards in the list. On the other hand, what I am pretty wild about seeing in the list is this exciting 7-drop, which is not nearly as good, but is nonetheless hilarious and delightful. Okay, this is UwU, or UwU. I think the X and the W are basically interchangeable. UwU Carnivorous Bloom. I might actually have to like increase the size of this a little bit more just so that people can see it a little better, because it's got a lot of text on it. It's got just a tad more text on it than you normally see on a card. UwU, a 4/4 for 7. When a unit goes into your void while UwU is in your deck, UwU gets +5, -1, or +3 strength, or +2/+2, or +3 health, or -1 strength +5 health, or Aegis, or Berserk, or Deadly, or Decay, or Killer, or Lifesteal, or Overwhelm, or Quick Draw, or Ambush. Ooh. Yeah, so basically, as long as this card is in your deck and a lot of stuff is dying, it is going to become a fairly scary, nasty endgame card that will eventually be able to ambush out berserk into your opponent with Overwhelm and then just completely blow your opponent out, or potentially like kill or something for a huge amount of damage while overwhelming, lifesteal to save your own health total. It has quick draw as well, so like there's a lot of different possibilities there. If you get deadly overwhelm, quick draw, and killer on it, then basically you just get to do all of UwU's extra damage in like a big giant lethal blow. This card will typically end the game the turn it's played if you can actually put a number of different units into your void, because it's very, very likely to have quite a wide variety of battle skills. On the other hand, there are a couple of like interesting disadvantages to it. One is that it can definitely get some randomness that maybe isn't in your favor. You might end up with an UwU that has, say, like it's a 220 or something like that with lifesteal and overwhelm, or maybe you roll the absolute worst luck roll possible, which is 4d12s. You get the +5 -1 multiple times, and then you basically just have a 20-0 unit that then rolls a bunch of damage abilities and doesn't get extra health, and you don't have a way to put it back into your deck. So that's a possibility as well. A very rare possibility, especially considering that the card is designed with multiple ways to gain health in mind. There are 3 ways to gain health and only 1 to lose it. So the card just doesn't really do that kind of thing. It should be able to get, if people are asking if it should get the stat bonuses indefinitely, yes, it should be able to roll absolutely all of the stat bonuses indefinitely. With the battle skills, typically you will not roll a battle skill on a random roll twice, so you can't get Aegis and then get Aegis again and it's just a dead roll. So yeah, this card will eventually accumulate all of the battle skills, and it will also continue to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, so only the battle skills don't double dip. So yeah, it's an interesting card. There's a lot of different ways that this card can be pretty wild, and if you're playing it in like a Reanimator style deck and it's just like the bottom card of your list, then you get into something that has like a very, very sort of immediate closeout in a kind of fun and interesting way. On the other hand, the card is fairly low on interactivity. Like if you're just playing a bunch of mill or a bunch of sacrifice and UwU is like just sort of the last card that you play to kill your opponent, then maybe that's not as satisfying a thing. But building an UwU is kind of an interesting experiment, and I think it would be particularly fun if you could see the UwU grow. I don't think you're going to be able to see the UwU grow, but it is kind of curious to see if I am going to be interested to see if the card will reveal itself and show precisely what ridiculous nonsense it's getting. I think that's very unlikely, since if you have 4 copies of it, then all of them are going to be getting different types of things. But I don't know. I just kind of want to be checking on my mandrakes every now and then and seeing how they're getting along. Yeah, this is a pretty flavorful, stylish card. There's a lot of cool things going on with it. It's good randomness design for the most part, because it is something that definitely has like a decent amount of different things that you need to do. A, you have to keep the card in your deck, which is not always easy. If you draw this card, it's just a dead 4/4 for 7. B, you have to like kill a lot of your own units and most likely mill a lot of your own units to put units into your void. If you can do that, then UwU is definitely looking a lot better on those circumstances. Say if we're playing something like the Invocation Impossible deck or the Azendel deck, where you have like a bunch of Invoke the Waystones and you just cycle through your entire deck until you have the UwU in your void and then Dark Return it back out. That's kind of a pretty fun way to end a game. Very satisfying kind of aspect of it. And also, like, if this card is played like in just normal circumstances, you're not trying too hard for it, it can do some really interesting high rolls that kind of win you a game or two, but it's not going to be so reliable or so good that the power level is going to be like sort of out of control. I think that Direwolf has just always designed random cards very, very well. They're always very fun. They're always really entertaining to play and interesting. They're always like powerful in certain ways if you work very hard for them, but you do have to work hard to actually sort of get the maximum amount of value and fun out of those types of decks, and they're rarely overpowered. I don't think that UwU is necessarily a broken card by any means, although we will certainly see. There's so much text on this card that it's actually a little bit hard to evaluate. It's quite possible that this card actually gets much more powerful than you would expect right out the gate and can probably like kill people very, very quickly under very like simple circumstances, but I doubt it. I think the card is just like a little bit slow and a little bit more along the lines. So yeah, two very opposite ends of the spectrum spoiled today. We have the big crazy randomness card that's like a super fun Timmy and a super fun Johnny card, and then we have the big spiky 2/3 that is just like, I don't like the current meta, I'd like to change it. This will definitely change up the current meta, and maybe it'll change up the current meta for the better, but overall I'm not in love with this particular card change. I would have liked to have seen like, I mean, I'm basically at the point where I would like to be seeing Echo's cards just rotating out to help solve the current problems that we're having with the meta. So, like, I'm less in favor of the 2/3 that's going to be consistently showing up for the next, like, year or two. So, yeah, little bit of a mixed bag on this one. But hey, you got a very, very powerful, probably A tier to S tier card, and you got a very, very interesting control finisher with a lot of fun randomness attached. And I actually really like my control finishers to have randomness attached. So pretty into this. We're going to be seeing more Bastion Rising cards soon, and so far, mostly like what I'm seeing. It's looking like it's going to be a pretty interesting campaign so far. So we'll keep putting out reviews as cards come out, and we'll see you all next time with more Eternal spoiler breakdowns. See ya!